Joining us now, trial attorney C.K. Hoffler, she's in Atlanta, Georgia, and jury consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine is in Orlando, Florida. Good morning to both of you ladies. So, C.K., Amber Heard's team wants Johnny Depp back on the stand. Why? What do you think is going on here? Obviously, they have something that they want to share with the world.
Absolutely. Good morning, Ted. I think this is going to be very, very, very explosive. There must be one point in particular that they feel that Johnny Depp can corroborate and that will help their case. Otherwise, they would never call him. This is very risky. He's obviously going to be a hostile witness. He's obviously going to try his entire case through his testimony. So they better be really certain that they can score that point because he's going to disrupt her case. That's what happens when you call a plaintiff or a party in your case in chief that's an adverse party. And so it's a very risky proposition, but they must feel it's going to pay off.
Susan, you watched Johnny Depp on the stand during his case in chief on cross and direct. How assess his credibility, if you will, compared to Amber Heard specifically, because that's what this case is all about. One of them's lying. What did he bring to the stand? What did he do that stood out to you?
Well, when I watch Johnny Depp, he's very methodical. He's also very careful when he's, delivering his words. He thinks before he speaks. He's not overly emotional. He's got his emotional affect right in check. His facial expressions emote what you would expect a person to emote when they're being truthful. When I watch Amber is histrionic. Her facial expressions are much more exaggerated. And so when you look at the two of them, you go, which one's more grounded and which one seems to be more phlegmatic or overly expressive or maybe histrionic. So when you're looking at their demeanors, they're completely different. The question is, which one looks and appears and sounds and their stories are more believable? And when we look at this entire case, it really is going to really boil down to who are they going to believe?
Absolutely. Susan, today as we watch this, what should we be looking for? You said that Johnny Depp seemed truthful, but if he's confronted with something that's going to be very uncomfortable, we don't know what's going to happen today, but what should we be looking for in terms of trying to detect whether or not he is being truthful today? Because we believe he was the first time around for the most part, but what are some of the telltale signs that maybe a guy like Johnny Depp would have difficulty hiding?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So when he's delivered a question where he's trying to maneuver away from it or tell the story different from what he knows to be true, you're going to see a cluster happen. And it happens within the first 5 seconds. He's asked a probative question. He's trying to squirm his way out of it. You might see him shift, move, could be eye blocking, could be a shift in his body language, and then you'll see at least 2 other indicators. Could be stammering, stuttering. It could be verbal or nonverbal, but remember, when a stimulus question is asked, to detect whether he's being truthful or not will happen in the first 7 seconds, and it happens in a cluster, and it could be anything outside of his normal behavior of what we have been seeing for the past 6 weeks.
It's fascinating. This is all going to play out today, and there's so many questions of what are they after? What does Amber's team know that they want to bring out today? Susan, you study human behavior. Has the behavior not of Johnny Depp, but of society in general, in terms of looking at Johnny Depp changed because of this trial, because of what they've seen? And, let's face it, back when the allegations came out, we just threw him away with Harvey Weinstein and said, oh, he was a wife beater, let's cancel. Has that changed?
I don't think so. I think that from the very beginning, I think Counselor would agree with us, especially when she's done jury trials herself, is that most people, when they've heard the opening statement, have already decided guilt or innocence. Did Johnny Depp or is Johnny Depp an abuser? We already knew he was a drug addict. They've already removed that from them, their decision making. Now it really boils down to now, what is he trying to protect? And we know that any sort of high stakes situation, we've got his status, his relationships with other people, whether he would be embarrassed or not, money. He's got a lot to lose if he doesn't tell the story in a believable manner. And I think he has effectively done that. And I think the jury also sees that. And also the public. I think by public opinion, I think that Johnny Depp has far surpassed Amber Heard when it comes to credibility.
All right, we're step aside, take a break. Coming up, the jury has now heard 3 different versions of the so-called staircase incident from the people who were there. We'll compare all the stories next. CK Hoffler, Susan Constantine, still with us. Susan, do you first hear when you studied human behavior and you've watched these witnesses, we know what you think of Johnny and Amber. What about Whitney? What did she,
Yes.
What stood out about Whitney's testimony to you?
Okay, so I'm really glad you asked that question because I'm watching the two of them, of course, tell the same story, and then we've got the sister. So first of all, I want to say preface, both of them, both Johnny and Amber, are not telling the right story. Both of them are fabricating the story. There are lots of discrepancies in their nonverbal behavior and what they're saying, and I see a lot of cognitive load, which tells me that they're working too hard to think it through and they're being deceptive. Now, let's look at the sister. When we look at the sister, she's much more believable, even though she is Amber's sister. Her, what we call illustrators, her body language, her gesturing on point, and it's usually right before she says a word, it all made perfect sense. But there is an issue. What we look at, what I was looking at, is when she's describing something, what is her dominant hand? So her dominant hand is her right hand. When people express truthfulness, they do it with their right hand. When they go off the grid, they tend to dominate with their opposite hand. So then they become incongruent. So when I'm watching her, most of what she is saying is true, but we don't know if she was there the entire time. And also her dominant versus non-dominant hand were gesturing not exactly the way it should have happened, especially when it was grabbing the hair. She switched over to her non-dominant hand. So that, to me, is a question I need to explore deeper.
CK, the story that Whitney told was pretty much in line with Amber's version of events, and it's not good for Johnny Depp if you believe her, if you believe everything. Now, there's the Jennifer Howell equation, where the Depp team is going to bring in some testimony from a friend of Whitney's named Jennifer Howell, who declared that after this incident, she was living with Whitney, and Whitney told her, oh my gosh, I had to save Johnny because Amber was gonna kill him. And so she's come forward and has a different version of this. How important is Jennifer Howell? Because as it stands now, to Susan's point, Whitney was pretty good on that witness stand. Another version, Susan Constantine, what do we think of his version, and what does it say about remembering events years later and the human condition?
So what he was doing was accessing the visual part, the visual memory of his brain. You saw his eyes moving up and they were kind of jogging around. So that doesn't mean whether he's being truthful or being deceptive, just tells you that he tends to be more of a visual thinker. So he had to go up and he's trying to figure out what happened first, what happened second. But then you do see where he came across and he kind of scratched his nose a little bit. That area is where there's some stress there. It causes irritation of capillaries. So when he was doing that, I would have removed part of that, what he had stated, because he really wasn't sure, because that gesture just didn't match up. But on the other hand, his eye movements, recalling, it's stored in the memory. Everything is recalled. I don't care how many years it has passed. Everything is stored in the subconscious mind. So I do think that he was reliving it, but he kind of went off a little bit when he did that.
Interesting, yeah. I just figured it was that ZZ Top beard. He had something stuck in there, CK. What do you think about, as we move forward here, the case in chief for Amber Heard is concluding today, likely by the end of the morning. Has she done enough to move the ball? Because everybody seemed to be in agreement when Johnny Depp was finished with his case in chief, he had a clear advantage.
I don't think that she's done a lot to move the ball. Their strategy clearly was to have all these witnesses come in and for the cumulative effect to really impact Johnny Depp's credibility and to demonstrate that he's a wife beater. I don't think that she's done that. I think that she has made him look bad and made herself look bad, but I don't think that she's moved the pendulum at all in terms of persuading the jury that what she's saying is truthful.
We do have, it's not just Johnny Depp coming to the stand. There's an intimate partner violence expert we're expecting on the stand, and then also an anatomy expert expected to take the stand, which in openings, you remember, they promised they would have an expert that basically said Johnny's version of the fingertip story just doesn't make sense.
I survived. I survived that man, and I'm here, and I'm able to look at him.
Let's bring in jury consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine in Orlando, Florida. Susan, that staring contest scenario where she wanted to stare at Johnny and he refuses to look at her. How do you assess that? And does it make sense that he wouldn't look at her because of some promise that he made? And do you think that the jury now understands it to the point because it was odd, was it not, that he's been looking down the whole trial?
Yeah, and I'm sure that there is that part of that backstory that he said, I'm never going to meet eyes at you. I think there is some truth to that, but also too, he's not going to give her any attention whatsoever. And when he does face blocking or head blocking, that in itself is a signal of how he feels about her. So just know that it doesn't mean he's being deceptive, just means that has how he feels about her. I don't want to meet eyes with you. I don't want to connect with you. Now, I think that for Amber, when he does it, naturally she becomes more assertive. When she does that, or when he puts his head down, she leans in and tries to convince. She tries to gain his attention. But if you look at the dynamics of the relationship, that he withdraws, when he withdraws, she becomes more the aggressor. They're doing the same thing non-verbally in a very subtle sort of way. Right here, we're seeing it play out.
What do you think about her reaction in terms of crying? People say that they didn't see any tears. A lot of the facial expressions that go along with crying while she was on the witness stand. Assess that. Was she actually emotional, or was this an act?
It was an act. And here's the reason why, okay? Facial expressions are coded. There's 42 muscles in the face, and we can code them what muscles are moving during specific types of emotions, sadness, distress, etc. She's showing the expressions, what we're calling is they're elevated. So when you're looking at those expressions, they're magnified. And then when they're magnified, should create more of a physiological response, which is crying. So the crying didn't go along with the emotions, so it wasn't congruent. That was the part of the acting. And that's what people are feeling when they're watching here, that it doesn't seem authentic. So that was an act.
What about Johnny Depp's reaction to some of the testimony? Yes, he's looking down, but sometimes he's actually laughing in the courtroom in front of the jury. How does that play to jurors, do you think, when they see someone who's here for such an important thing laughing at his opponent?
Yeah, not good, because regardless, he shouldn't be doing that. And when he's doing it, he's trying to blow off some emotion he's feeling inside and trying to make light of it. Snickering, it's a form of being condescending. And you can play out in their marriage what's really going on. Johnny stonewalls her, and he blows her off, and you can see him puffing out air and smirking and looking at his attorney, and he's looking at his attorney to kind of affirm how he's feeling. And it's kind of like this inside joke, which really doesn't look good in front of the jury. Absolutely not. Shouldn't be happening.
You bring up his attorney, Camille Vasquez, and Johnny Depp obviously have a very close relationship. People have speculated about how close it is. One of the big moments was after cross-examination with Amber Heard finished. The jury left the courtroom, and this was raw emotion. What did you think when you see that? Is this just blowing off steam after weeks and months of preparation?
Yeah, one of the things that I want you to look at is watch the longer hold. When she starts to depart from him, he holds the gaze and he also holds the smile. So when you're looking at that, there's the internal affection he has towards her. He feels good about what's going on here. He also feels good about the affection that he's feeling from her. But I want to keep also in mind here, as a trial consultant, it is not unusual that we wouldn't be close to our client, especially when they're being accused of domestic violence. Myself as a woman, want to de-escalate that person's physical intimidation to show he is not the aggressor. That's what we do all the time. So that hand pat that's on the shoulder here, there's a lot of warmth and connection there. I'm sure they have a strong relationship, friendship outside the courtroom.
Yeah, obviously. Thanks for your expertise as always. We're going to step aside, take a break. Coming up, both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, of course, recorded each other. And the jury has listened to a lot of that. We're going to talk about how that affects this case. Plus, we're waiting for the arrivals outside the courthouse. Our cameras are there. Stay with us. Well, Susan, he seems like he's ready for another week, the final week of this thing. He's been upbeat from day one, because this is his show, is it not? And this is the reason everyone's here is because of his decision.
Yes, and one of his greatest gifts is connectiveness, right? So he's a relationship builder where Amber is not. Amber is more aloof. So when we look at Johnny Depp connecting with his fans, that shows that likability, that connectiveness, and that really has a lot to do with verdict. We know that sometimes jurors will choose sides based on likability factor. It's, trial consulting 101. Who do they like better? And it could be as basic as that.
Well, one of them's lying, CK, and we noticed today Amber Heard arrived with her sister Whitney together, and one would argue that Whitney Heard is lying if you believe that Amber's lying about the staircase incident, or maybe they're not lying, and maybe this is the one incident where Johnny Depp is not telling the truth, and Susan alluded to it watching his testimony. You're right. I mean, that she admitted it on the stand, and everybody there, that was the one, as you pointed out earlier, the one common denominator. She landed a blow on Johnny Depp's face. We want to thank Susan Constantine for her expertise. As always, it's a real treat having you, Susan. Enjoy the rest of the day. I'm sure you'll be watching along with all of us as Johnny Depp returns to the witness stand.